Hello, everyone.
Indeed.
So this is our first episode back during the break. Just a few short things we're going to talk about. We got a voicemail. We're going to talk about Frank Darabont suing AMC, and a little bit about the first half of the season in general, and then we'll look towards the future as well. So what do you guys want to start with?
We might as well hop right into the Darabont to you. I mean, it's pretty much in the headlines, and his new series just premiered on, did it not, on TNT? Mob City.
It came and went. I don't think you'll hear a lot about it ever again.
I have it on DVR. I haven't watched any of them yet. I have Africa to blame for that, but whatever.
I saw the pilot, and I thought it was kind of slow and predictable, which is really weird, because I usually love Darabont stuff, but I just found that the pilot didn't really grab me, so I didn't pursue further, but I'd be interested to hear your take on the whole thing if you do end up watching.
Jon Bernthal's certainly been all over the place. Like, he's in that, and he's also in The Wolf of Wall Street and Grudge Match, both in theaters right now, so he's getting work.
He's going to be in that new, is it the Brad Pitt movie, the World War II Brad Pitt movie, where they play a crew at the tail end of World War II that goes into Germany for some crazy secret mission with a Sherman tank?
Oh, yeah, Fury. Yeah.
Yes, Fury, yes.
Yeah, the David Ayer movie. Yeah, that's happening. He's in there.
So here's more or less what happened. Well, as you know, Frank Darabont was the guy who brought The Walking Dead to television, and then was it halfway through season 2 he was ousted, a couple days after Comic-Con, I believe, and we haven't heard a lot from him since. We knew it wasn't exactly good terms that he left AMC on, but we didn't know a lot about it, and now he has officially sued them, saying they owe him a lot of money. Now, I don't know about you guys, but, me with my law background, a lot of times you see lawsuits like this and you go, oh boy, what's this one going to be about? But after reading a bit about it, it actually seems pretty legit to me. It's a little complicated, especially if you don't follow the TV business and how it works, but the thing you really need to know, I guess, is background is just because a show airs on, let's say, ABC, does not mean ABC made that show. It might have been made by Fox or Universal or some other, Columbia Broadcasting or something, and it might be then licensed to ABC, and ABC would then pay for that license, and then they can air the show. Or ABC might make a show and then air it themselves. It happens all the time as well. But the problem comes in when you have somebody like Frank Darabont, who's hired by AMC to, I don't know exactly what the timeline is here, but basically AMC said, from what I understand, write the pilot, write this first season, and we are going to shop this around, find a network for it, to air the show, and you'll get 12.5% of the profits. And granted, we should say this is all allegedly, this is according to the lawsuit. I don't know any of the facts beyond what I've read, so I'm not saying this is 100% what happened, but allegedly, you're going to get 12.5% of the profits from the show going forward. Awesome. And then, instead of selling the show to a network, they did that, but they sold it to themselves. And what's being alleged is they basically sold themselves the show for way less money than it was worth, and then he's not getting any profits, basically. So he's owed a lot of money, according to him at least, from all 4 seasons so far. In the upcoming 5th season, he also wants money for the spinoff and for Talking Dead, because all these things came out of him bringing the show to television. All these things that were promised him money-wise, and he hasn't seen a cent of it. And the argument is basically that what they did by selling themselves the show in this situation, because of the way the contracts were written, was shady and underhanded and a bad thing. So I'm not saying it is a bad thing necessarily or not. I'm just saying now that I've actually read the details of the lawsuit, it seems a lot more legit than I might have thought initially from just seeing headlines.
It seems like, if anything, AMC was just so, they wanted to, with them taking out Frank Darabont, the showrunner of the show, they wanted to kind of smooth things over so quickly that maybe things got lost in the shuffle, and that's kind of where we've ended up now because of this, which is unfortunate for a lot of people involved. But
Right. Although, I mean, to be fair, all the contract stuff would have been done long before midway through the second season.
You think that, and it just seems like if you're rushing somebody out to brush somebody back in, so you can kind of smooth over this transition process of the guy that started the show to somebody else, while also dealing with all the publicity that comes with that. I can understand, I guess, where something wrong happened, which led to what's going on right now.
Right.
Which is not like, I mean, it's obviously not blameless, but I can see why something like this emerged, I guess.
Well, basically, let's put it this way. On paper, The Walking Dead has not made a cent, which means Frank Darabont gets 12.5% of that, which is zero. But it's, as we know, the biggest scripted show on television. There's merchandising, Halloween costumes, you've got the comic books and stuff. There's a lot of money being made here, but the way that they have, it's called self-dealing. And granted, this is if it's true. If everything he's alleged is true, the way they have self-dealt means AMC has made a lot of money, but The Walking Dead is technically losing money. In effect, not paying anyone the money that they're owed, unless it's just you get this much money per episode, then you automatically get it. But anybody who's making profits off of the gross or off of the profits, they're not getting anything. Except AMC themselves. Again, this is as alleged. We could find out that a lot of this isn't true. Who knows?
Also, it's been a thing. I mean, Darabont's really, he's been in the press promoting Mob City, his new show on, they just did with Bernthal from Walking Dead. He's made it very public, his displeasure with the way AMC dealt with him. And plus, I mean, going in, they had no idea it was going to be as huge a hit as it ended up being. I mean, it just really, it was kind of an unexpected success for them. So I could see them not, really dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's when it came to, giving him an exit deal.
Well, too, just looking at the lawsuit itself, looking at the details, I'm looking at Deadline Hollywood. They had an article that they put out on, this is dated December 17th of '03, and they have a lot of details from the lawsuit in there. And supposedly the fee that they negotiated with themselves, which I think is kind of at the heart of all this heartburn, is for $1.4 million per episode. That's what the suit alleges. And that covers about 65% of the production cost. So, Jordan, like you were saying, how it's not making money. Allegedly, that up and through before the 3rd season premiered, the show was in the hole $55 million, given production costs and what the licensing fee is. But that production cost and the actual amount of the debt, it looks like it's pushed it to like $71 million, and it'll continue to grow. But the suit alleges that they're not factoring in the 30% tax credit they get from the state of Georgia for filming there. And the other thing is, and this is what I found interesting to kind of accentuate the whole short billing, is that apparently Lionsgate charges AMC, I think it's $3 million. It says here $3 million an episode for season 5 of Mad Men. And Mad Men's ratings are considerably way less than what they are for The Walking Dead. So I think, using that as a barometer for AMC and these other shows that get way less ratings and what they're charged, I think that's, kind of adding to Darabont's, to what he's trying to do. And that's what really kind of hit it over the head. And that's not the first studio to do so. I mean, over time, I remember the X-Files was a big one. That they sold a big thing for Duchovny when he sued Fox and all of them was that they sold the syndication rights back to Fox affiliates for a ridiculously low amount. And part of that was to keep all the other costs down, so they wouldn't have to pay, such high residuals. And this is, I think Hollywood accounting has been the subject of a lot of mystery and a lot of negative attention for, as long as there's been movies. I mean, according to Hollywood, I don't think there's ever any movie that's ever turned a profit when you factor everything in. So this is just kind of more of the same. But it's really interesting to see if all this stuff is true, how little, it just seems really deliberate on AMC's part if even like half of this stuff is true.
Right. And like you pointed out, this is not a completely unheard of lawsuit. It happened with Home Improvement, The X-Files, Will and Grace, among many others. It definitely happens. You got to be careful when you write these contracts to not make things too good for yourself, essentially.
Yeah, and some of it, I think, is beyond the participants' control. I mean, they're thinking, they've got this level of participation. I imagine they don't have any control over what the studio licenses their stuff out to either themselves or to somebody else, and how all of this accounting gets done. They only know their deal. But I think we see that where when somebody takes a large percentage of their salary through some sort of net profit, it seems like that's what these things always go south is, and especially for Darabont being around the Hollywood system as long as he was, that this probably wouldn't go the way it did. But I guess too, part of it is, part of this lawsuit is that he was stripped of his executive producer credit for the show, even though that he was supposed to be, basically his deal was lifetime EP on the show. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But one of the other things you mentioned too, Jordan, that I found interesting was that he's supposed to basically get participation on anything derivative of The Walking Dead. So,
or at least that's what he's suing for. I don't know if he's actually saying that that's what he was contracted for, but I don't think it's necessarily a unrealistic expectation. If he's brought to television, anything that's a derivative work of that, theoretically he should get some money for.
Well, looking at this Deadline Hollywood article, it says that part of what's in his complaint is Darabont has a contractual right of first negotiation with regard to any derivative production related to The Walking Dead. So I guess because he didn't get first negotiation or any kind of input, I'm assuming, with The Talking Dead, and then this upcoming spinoff, that that's where he feels there's a breach. But if that's true, that's again very interesting. It just seems like AMC was all in on him from the beginning and used him to get all in, and then it just seemed like once they realized maybe what kind of a hit they had on their hand and how much of the pot they were going to have to give up to him and his agents, that maybe they started to rethink things a little bit. Again, if any of this is true, I mean, we only know what he's suing for and what he's alleging, and then like I said, just based on how these things have gone in the past, I mean, it seems like almost in every case the studio caves to some degree and settles with whoever the complainant is. So I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I'd be curious what you think, Jordan, but do you think this is ever going to even get close to trial?
It's certainly unlikely. I mean, and Jim pointed out, but the timing of the lawsuit with Mob City worked well to at least get it out there in the press, and that's probably enough to get the cogs rolling behind the scenes. That said, you've got two competing factors here. One, if you're AMC or any company, you don't want your dirty laundry aired in front of everybody, even if it's not that dirty. Like even if 90% of this is just not true, you don't want the 10% that is, or the 5% or whatever, because everybody makes mistakes. You don't want that stuff aired in front of everybody. But at the same time, this is a lawsuit for a huge amount of money, or at least for me anyway. And there is also the chance that they might not be able to come to an agreement behind closed doors and settle in a way that's going to make all the parties agreeable to it, and then it could go to trial. You never know with these things, but I think more likely than not, it'll probably be settled behind the scenes, but you never know. Since there's so much bad blood, at least that's the impression we have, that's why I think it might go to trial. Almost like, hey, I'm going to stick it to you by forcing you to make this all public.
But I'd still be surprised if it did actually go to trial. Like, it does kind of seem like it's going to fit more into a silent negotiation was reached or whatever, and we won't really hear the end of it necessarily, or we will, and it'll just be something minor as opposed to a big, drawn-out ordeal. I think that's going to happen. It just seems like that seems more than likely.
It all depends if he really wants his money or if he really wants to make a point.
Well, I agree with Aaron. This seems like the context can be solved with a checkbook, not a judgment. So.
Persons familiar with the matter say that Frank Darabont got X million in settlement with AMC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, to give you a preview of episode 156, that's what we will be talking about. Because this will probably be going on for a while.
Years, I would think. Yeah, but it's funny that the Dateline Hollywood article starts off, it has an update, and apparently Kurt Sutter, who is the showrunner for Sons of Anarchy,
who has an opinion on everything, and he needs to know it.
Yeah, it's funny. He put out a tweet, and I'll paraphrase because it's sort of foul, but he says, "Go Frank, F those ghoulish deadite scumbags in their green gob a-holes." I ain't talking about the zombies. So yeah,
that sounds like Kurt Sutter, all right. Yeah,
exactly. So I thought that was funny. This stuff just really fascinates me in that, I just really wonder what AMC's endgame was with this. If they really just, thought if nothing else they would delay, having to deal with it, or if they handle it this way, then in the end they'll probably have to settle out for less than what they would do if they were upfront and on the level. Again, if all this is true, this could all be bunk.
Well, and there's lots of things that may seem underhanded or shady, but are totally legal. And depending on how these contracts were written, and I'd love to be able to read them, and hopefully at some point I will be able to, but depending on how they were written, this may have been totally underhanded, totally shady, and totally written into the contract that he signed, for all we know.
If you're trying to tell me there's dishonest people in Hollywood, well, I don't know what to say, sir.
What's funny is, yeah, exactly. The last bit, I guess I'll read from this Deadline Hollywood article, is to kind of recap the history. And I guess I didn't realize it's been so long, and we've heard so much rumor and talk that who knows. It's easy to forget what really happened. But I thought this was kind of cool because this last paragraph, it says the lawsuit also recaps The Walking Dead's winding path to the small screen. Darabont first developed the project for NBC in 2005. He later took the script to AMC, which was ready to commit, but by then the TV rights to the graphic novel had expired. Meanwhile, HBO was also pursuing the rights to develop The Walking Dead as a series with what I'd heard was Guillermo del Toro. In the end, AMC was able to obtain them and proceed with Darabont's version. So again, I remember the NBC talk. I think I seem to remember some talk about Guillermo del Toro, but I know that Kirkman was really interested in working with Frank Darabont, which leads me to another question. With all this bad blood between AMC and Darabont and a lot of it being public, Kirkman's remained pretty quiet on this, and Kirkman's not one to usually be quiet on matters, especially like on the comic book side. I mean, after he left Marvel to really focus on his independent stuff, we have the famous Kirkman manifesto from that Comic-Con where he kind of, him and Todd McFarlane, he kind of put something out to Todd McFarlane about, people creating their own stuff. He's been pretty vocal about his, I guess, disdain is maybe a strong sentiment, but his...
he supports creators' rights.
Yeah. He's not a really big fan these days of like DC and Marvel. He's remained very quiet on this. Do you think, and I know, just hearing interviews and stuff with him in the past and how gracious he was with Frank Darabont, do you get the impression that there's a lot of bad blood now between Kirkman and Darabont, just like there seems to be between Kirkman and Tony Moore?
I think it just falls into the realm of we just won't ever really know until years later when people come out in the open with a lot of these things. But I would not believe that there's certainly bad blood going on somewhere, just because obviously the direction of the show was going one way and people wanted to go a different way, and that's what led to a split. And none of us can say where Kirkman was in this and like how involved he was in ushering out one person, bringing another person to keep the show in a certain direction. We just don't know really the power that Kirkman has in terms of the series direction or like how willing he is to go certain routes, because that's what a lot of people want things to do. It's hard to say. I wouldn't be surprised if there is bad blood between Kirkman and Darabont just because of the way things have played out, but I don't know. It's hard to say.
Next, let's talk about the first half of the season as a whole, what we liked, what we didn't like, and just what our general Buster ratings for the first half of the season. And let's go alphabetical. Aaron, why don't you go first? first.
So I did it the easy way as far as the Buster rating of the half of the season goes. I just took all the Buster ratings I had on my reviews, added them up, and divided, and it's a 3.5. It was exactly 3.5. And I'm very much content with that. I think that's a solid thought of what I have for this half of the season. I certainly like it. I certainly think there are a lot of very good things about this season so far. I think there are things that the season's done better than previous seasons, but I also think it's kind of backtracked a bit. Whereas I think the third season had a stronger first half than the season did. In terms of things that have worked really well for me, Michonne has proven to be a very useful asset for the show instead of just kind of silent and not doing much of anything, as like last season was the big complaint there. Daryl continues to be awesome all the time. I think Andrew Lincoln has done a tremendous job as Rick this season. We had our issues. I had my issues with Carol, but she went out on a solid note based on just how that episode played out. Was that one intern, isolation, maybe? Indifference was last episode, and that's still probably my favorite episode of the season so far, actually. But the governor stuff was where I wasn't as big of a fan. I do think the 2 episodes featuring the governor are my least favorite episodes of the series overall. And the finale, while emotional, a lot of crazy things do happen. It's because of how much I don't care about the governor that just didn't have that much of an impact on me compared to other episodes of that other significant episodes of the series so far. So yeah, I like the season quite a bit. I think it's still quite strong. Just a few hiccups here and there, but still very good, strong start to the first half of the season.
I would give the season overall a 3.75. It had some really high highs, but had some pretty low lows. I thought Scott Wilson's performance overall this season was stellar, and I would really love to see him get some award recognition. I just thought especially the episode with Herschel fighting the flu by himself and everyone falling around him. The final episode with the governor and his interaction there. I mean, I just really he really went above and beyond what I thought he was capable of as an actor from what I'd seen from him before. Like Aaron said, I thought that the whole bit with the governor was kind of a road they shouldn't have gone down and really didn't need to go down, and it didn't seem like padding so much as it seemed like unnecessary. The whole trying to kind of semi-redeem this guy in our eyes who would just mercilessly gun down dozens of people just a few episodes ago. So I thought that was kind of like a misfire of the season. But overall, I really like the mix that Gimple brings to the series. It's definitely it's got a lot of the characterization stuff that we got with Darabont, and it's got a lot of the action stuff we got after Darabont left. It's kind of a nice mix of the two. I enjoyed this half of the season so far, so that's my rating, 3.75.
I think I'll give it a solid 4.25. I shared a lot of the same dislikes of things earlier on in the season, but I also really kind of liked the governor stuff. I think I agree with you, Aaron, that the first half of last season was stronger than the first half of this season just in general, but the stuff they did well in this first half of season 4, I think they did really, really well, and the lows were not as low for me. So I really did like this. I mean, I'm hopeful for the second half of the season. We talked last time about some of the things we want to see, and we'll talk about that later on in this episode as well. So I think even some of those lows can be smoothed over a little bit, depending on how they're handled going forward. But just in general, I like the governor stuff quite a bit. I thought the whole flu thing was really inventive and cool to see in a zombie universe, because it's just one of those things I haven't really seen in the various zombie media that I've consumed over the last 2 decades. So in general, 4.25, and I'm looking forward to the second half.
I'll give this a 4, and I think it's a case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. I think the arc that they took and where things started and where they ended was pretty amazing. I kind of agree a lot with what Aaron said and then Jim, what he said. As far as characters go, I think not to just be kind of jumping on the bandwagon, the Norman Reedus bandwagon, but I think Daryl's just been a really awesome character this season. We're finally getting some great characterization from Michonne, which we've all been kind of clamoring for quite some time. I like the route they took with Carl and Rick. I think another season or another half season of Carl being kind of the smartassy, whiny, wanting, disagreeing with Rick would have just been kind of felt like more of the same and just kind of gotten old. The fact that they both seem to be kind of on the same page and, Carl kind of going up a little bit, and then the way things ended, I thought was really, really well done. And the governor stuff to me just really slowed it down. I would have loved for the season to end the way it ended at this half at the end of last season. Like if that's how it ended, I think it would have just been much more powerful, and they could have done away with that and then moved on to something else. And I just feel like this first half of the season was a bit of a backtrack, but there's so many great moments in this half season overall that I think is what pushed it to a 4. I mean, like Jordan, like you're saying, the flu, and just the battle at the end, and just how emotional it was, and killing off key characters, and losing Herschel was really tough. I mean, to me that was just really, really tough. But we'll see. So overall, like I said, I think more good than bad, and pretty top notch. I think I'm more up on the series as a whole than I think I've been. Other than those 2 episodes, I think kind of backtracked a bit.
Jordan, you made a good point about the virus infection plotline, and it does come from. I mean, we're all of us have seen a lot of different kinds of zombie media, and it is something new, which makes sense because we haven't really seen this before. We obviously seen it before, but we haven't seen a zombie.
Thank you, Senor Tautology.
We haven't seen a zombie TV series before, and so because of that, you have to obviously have different narratives to kind of keep it fresh, and it led to something that was creative. I did like the idea of this kind of infection plotline that led to all these different kind of tangents involving, like, one has a mysterious murder going on, which still apparently could be open for debate, and other things led to Herschel dealing with his own kind of faith and what he saw in how he could help the situation, and then you have Rick dealing with things. Like, it led to all these other things that were most of them very effectively done. It's just like it was a neat idea that I liked, and I like the we obviously had those all the episodes start with the letter I, just a little kind of fun thing there, and it wasn't I agree, it was an inventive way to construct part of the season around in terms of having a kind of a mini arc.
I think it shows a lot of promise for Scott Gimple. I think he really does have a handle on the show, and I think the direction he's taking it is overall pretty positive, and I'm really excited for what's coming up.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up Herschel, and I know Jim did as well, but thank you for bringing him up again, Aaron, because it reminded me that I want to bring up. I really, really loved his storyline this whole half season of, not even just faith, in a general sense or in a specific sense, but the fact that he was able to go out, risk his life for the good of the group, to do what he thought was right, even though he knew the risks. And the fact that he got to go out while, he was brutally murdered, and he still went out with a smile on his face because his faith in humanity, his hope that there could be a future in Rick was the last thing he got to see. And so even though he was brutally murdered, he went out like a boss, and he went out like a guy who just had everything affirmed. I thought it was so awesome because even though it was a dark, terrible moment with his daughter screaming and crying, at the same time, it was one of the more uplifting things in the show in a way. And I just thought that was kind of neat, that juxtaposition.
I can agree with you on that. Jim made a good point because I didn't mean to mention Scott Wilson too in general for this season.
And Scott Wilson's beard.
What did I say? But yeah, it's one of those things where you get to look back on a season, or in this case half a season, and kind of see what the arc was for a certain character. And sometimes it works effectively, sometimes it doesn't. Andrea would be a good example where I see what they're trying. When you look at that last season in retrospect and like what Andrea's plotline was, and you get to the end of what she basically where she spells out what she was trying to do the whole time. I get how that makes sense in the mind of writers putting that on a piece of paper, but it didn't play out as effectively as I thought it could. Here, I mean, for what Herschel's going to do in this season, I think it does play out very effectively. I mean, I have issues with aspects of some of the episodes in general, but for the most part, everything Scott Wilson did, everything Herschel was involved in, I liked all that stuff, and I liked how it kind of where we started in the beginning of the season and where we ended with him. And I agree, it does have despite being a horrible thing that happens, it does have a hint of uplifting nature to it because he does have a chance to reflect on some things before he goes out. And he gets to see Rick make the decisions that he makes before he goes out, and he gets to say his piece on certain things directly to the governor. And it's a lot of very good work for a role like Herschel, which I've enjoyed much more here than I did in the comic.
Yeah, it's a totally different character. I mean, I'd say the same for some of the other characters. I mean, a lot of the other characters. I know we're going to have an episode coming up where we kind of compare the comic characters to their TV counterparts, but I think this, I can't say enough good things about Scott Wilson's character. A lot of the ancillary cast really impressed me. Melissa McBride as Carol. Really, I had problems with what they did with her and everything. It's kind of opened up this whole new interesting storyline. I thought her portrayal of Carol was really great this part of the season. They gave her a lot more to do and more, give her a more central part of the story. I'm hoping as we go forward we get more of the Tyrese that we get from, that we have in the comic. Tyrese now as it stands is kind of just okay in my opinion, not as potential, but as far as Herschel's concerned, I like this version much more than the one from the comic. And I know I go on and on about Scott Wilson, but if you watch these episodes, I mean his performance is really really stellar. And I agree with what Russ said too. I thought Norman Reedus was a real standout in this part of the season. They gave him more to do and more of a leadership role and more of like an interactivity. I was so glad to see Denai Dora give us more of a performance than just Grumpy Cat for Michonne. That was great. So I mean, it's been a great season overall. I'm more excited at the end of this half a season than I was at the end of last season actually. So.
Yeah, I think the potential for some really, really great storytelling based on how this half of the season ended is what's really got me excited. I mean, everybody kind of splintered on the run, confused, craziness going on, people that, certain characters think may or may not be dead, just utter chaos. Knowing some other characters that are going to be brought in has me really excited for the kinds of stories they could tell in the last 8 episodes of the season.
So, putting the first half of the season behind us for a few minutes at least, Russ, who is our sponsor for this week?
Our sponsor this week for the Walking Dead TV podcast is Discount Comic Book Service. That's dcbservice.com, where you can get tons of graphic novels, comics, statues, trinkets, you name it, for great low prices at dcbservice.com. Head on over to their website. We're reaching the end of the month, so the orders for December are just coming up due, but fret not. They are happy to take late orders and happy to take order changes later on. So if it gets to be the beginning of January as you're hearing this and haven't put your order in, don't worry, just do it. You can also check out their digital side. Where you can earn 5% back on your digital purchases through Comixology, and link that up through your Comixology and your DCBS account, and earn 5% back. So if there's a big omnibus or T-shirt or statue or something like that you've been eyeing or would like to get from DCBS and like your comics digitally or your issues digitally, you can use that to kind of help save up and lessen the blow from ordering some of these cool higher priced items off a Discount Comic Book Services site. Check out all of the Marvel and DC hardcovers and trade paperbacks. All the new hardcovers and trade paperbacks are 50% off at their site at dcbservice.com. There's all kinds of cool stuff there. The new order should be up within the first few days of January for January orders. So please check out our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service, and you can use the code WD8 if you're a new customer to Discount Comic Book Service or if you have not ordered in the last year. So once again, we thank Discount Comic Book Service, dcbservice.com, for their support of the Walking Dead TV podcast.
Next up, we have a voicemail from Brian. So, Russ, why don't you play that for us?
Hey guys, it's Brian Fuquay at Radio Fuquay. Having read the books and without going into too much detail, I was dreading the day this episode would come. My wife and I know the pain of losing a daughter. And actually right now, I'm taking her sister out for a stroll right now. You guys actually gave her a shout out. Went back when she was born on a different podcast. When you were doing your Captain America review. Her name's Anya. But I was already shaking before the episode aired. My wife was like, what's up with you? And I'm like, I can't tell you. You'll see. And it's kind of weird the way they played it out, I guess, because in comic book law, if there's no body, there's not necessarily a death. But I have to say that Andrew Lincoln's and Chandler Riggs' acting during that moment they hit the nail on the head. The initial shock followed by the grief. And then there's no time to even reflect. You have to just get moving. Anyway, can't believe it's already been over for the fall at least. And looking forward to February. But it's been a great run for at least this half of the season. Enjoy the podcast and hope to talk to you guys soon. Bye.
So thank you, Brian, for sending us the voicemail. First off, I think we should just convey our condolences and our thanks for leaving the voicemail, because I can't imagine it's an easy thing to bring up. But just to talk about Andrew Lincoln and Chandler Riggs acting, yeah, I mean, that was, even for somebody like me who hasn't thankfully had to deal with that in my own personal life, that was just absolutely devastating in those last few moments of the episode.
Heart-wrenching. Completely heart-wrenching.
Here's where it gets tricky to me in terms of the actual show, because I don't think AMC would want to show a dead baby on the series, but at the same time, it is kind of that rule of nobody doesn't necessarily mean that person's dead. So it comes down to, do we actually, and I think we might have touched on this when we talked about the finale, but do we actually think Judith has died, or do we think there's a mystery surrounding the fact that...
I think if they wanted to show it, she's already in a covered baby carrier. All you have to do is show it from the reverse angle, show the zombie walking up to it and reaching down and some blood comes out or something. You might not even have to show the blood.
Or similarly, you show after the fact, you show a reverse angle and Rick and
just
and looking into it and seeing the horror that happened or whatnot.
Exactly. I think there's ways around it. And I think we talked about it last episode, but and we'll talk about it more later on this episode, but the possibilities for how that could still play out, which allow Rick and Carl to have their grief, but still allow us to have the character going forward, I think would be quite interesting. More interesting than just killing her off.
Well, I mean, the point, nobody, no death, as they say. So,
and it does seem like, even for a show like Walking Dead, which very much sticks down to the dumps often for everybody on the show, I think it'd be a little much to kill off Herschel and have all the other stuff that happens, and a destroyed prison, lots of other deaths. I mean, and then throw on top of that a dead Judith. I mean, that seems like we're going a little far in all that. So yeah, I wouldn't.
Plus, I just think the story possibilities of having a infant and then a toddler and then a young child are worth more than just the devastation of killing one off for the effect.
Oh yeah, 2 grinds and a baby. We need to see that happen.
That beats the place.
Yeah, I mean, we had one child death in this episode, so I just...
True, yeah, I read about that. Yeah, we already had. Jesus, yeah, this is a rough one.
Yeah, so I just don't think it's going to happen. I think, like you're saying, Jordan, I think it works for the emotional effect that it's going to have on Rick and Carl, which I think will make the reunion really a sweet moment. I mean,
Which they should
when
be
they
more of, honestly.
yeah, kind of a happy moment, which will probably then, following Walking Dead fashion, lead to something incredibly horrible happening right after that.
Well, speaking of what might happen in the second half of the season, shall we transition, gentlemen, into our predictions, hopes, fears, just general discussion of what we think the second half of the season should be?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty.
I think we're all pretty much on the record saying that we really like these episodes where things are much more parsed out. It's focused on a selected group of characters as opposed to the whole group.
Amen.
I think we've seen plenty of examples of that. And given that we've now lost the prison, we have all the characters in a state of disarray. I like the idea that that could potentially lead to episodes where we focus on individual characters, and ideally, I think we could take some time before we kind of group everybody back together right away. I'd like to see an episode of just Rick and Carl on their own, which, given what I know in the comic, would be an interesting way to go. I'd like to see how that could play out. I'd like to see who's the show with at the end of the day. She's on her own. Yeah, she's just completely gone from everybody else. Where Glenn and the bus ended up, where Maggie, and I just like it'd be nice to see kind of these characters separated for a time before we kind of group them all back together and figure out what's going to happen next. That's kind of an idea I'd like to see happen.
Plus, I mean, we're talking about how we like the episodes where they focus on just a few characters at a time, and this is a good way to do that in an organic way that fits in the story.
Yeah, it would just be like arbitrarily saying these characters are doing this. That's why we're not seeing this episode. It's just a reason that we have a distinct feel for this episode for why we're seeing just these people or whatnot.
Plus, it's kind of a different direction for the show. We haven't really had that on a large scale in the show. I mean, we've had characters here and there that have been split off or go on a side mission or something, but we haven't had kind of like a mass chaos where I'm envisioning there's probably at least 3 or 4 different groups of the main cast that are that are split off. So I think that'll just add a lot more to the chaotic effect. It could give for some interesting moments where if each of these groups are kind of off on their own doing their own thing, they're going to come in contact with potentially other people, and then when everything kind of gels back together, which we're all assuming will, and I'm pretty sure is going to happen. Adding those personalities back into the main group and how others view the people that these other groups have brought in, I think that's going to add for an interesting dynamic.
As far as what I expect to see, I guess, I mean, obviously, I expect to see Carol to come back. With that, I can only hope, much like how I was saying earlier about how I like seeing Herschel's arc in that half of the season, I'd like to think that if things play out a way that they could, where this murder mystery thing and the who's feeding the walkers thing come back into play, I'd like to hope that Carol's been involved in that, and that would kind of reshape my thoughts on how the early part of the season was handling her character versus what we then come to learn as the season goes on. That'd be something I'd like to see in the series. I'd reconsider my thoughts, I guess, on some of the previous episodes based on knowledge learned later, if the show is indeed that clever, which I think it could be.
Right. And of course, we know in the second half of the season, and I'll stay away from comic spoilers, but Eugene, Abraham, and Rosita will be showing up. And to be quite honest, I mean, I remember some of the major points of their introduction arc in the comics, but I don't remember a lot of the specifics, so I couldn't spoil them if I wanted to. But I'm excited to see them. Abraham as a character was just always so awesome. I liked Rosita quite a bit, and Eugene was always Eugene had his moments. I'll say
it's
that.
a nice way to round out that trio.
Yes, and but I'm excited mostly to see who they meet up with first, how that plays out. Just kind of like you're saying, depending on who brings in what, or who brings in who to different groups, how these different things play out. Who they meet up with versus who they don't meet up with could make a world of difference for how that storyline plays out, because they could still be written as the same exact characters. Like, they could be the most spot-on Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene, translation from the comics we could hope for, but the results could still be drastically different if they meet a different set of characters before the ones they met in the comics, or someone just doesn't like them or doesn't trust them or something goes south. And I always like that kind of thing, where you don't betray the spirit of the character, yet you still end up with a majorly different result just based on the context.
And I think that's been largely true for the series in general, with some exceptions. I think it does come down to things happen in different orders, which led to different ways to depict certain characters, I guess. But yeah, I'm looking forward to them too, Abe especially. And I like the actor Michael Cudlitz quite a bit, so it's nice to see. I said I kind of figured that'd be a great choice if it happened, so I'm excited to see where that goes.
Plus, the show can always use more awesome mustaches.
True.
I think it's going to be interesting from another perspective too, because we're going to have a lot of alpha males in the group. I mean, I think Rick kind of wavers between being a true alpha male and a leader, but we've got we've got Daryl, we've got Tyrese, and now we'll have Abraham. That's going to be an interesting dynamic that not necessarily was the same way in the comic. And to see how that plays out is what I'm going to be interested in, to see who kind of takes the lead, who takes a back seat, who acquiesces, and that kind of thing.
And who gets hit upside the head with a hammer.
I know a lot of fans probably want to see a Daryl episode. I'm sure that will probably factor in some way. We haven't given Daryl much to do this season beyond just be generally awesome and help out when it comes down to killing some zombies. But a focus on Daryl, I guess, for an episode in terms of like where he went after this happened.
And remind me, who did he end up with by the end of the episode? Or was he also on his own? The last thing I remember was him killing a tank.
Yeah, he killed a tank.
And I don't remember what happened after that because it was just so awesome. It wiped my memory going forward. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, because you have this trade-off, right, where it's cool to see the characters separated from each other and have some more self-contained stories, but at the same time, you lose a little bit of forward momentum if the episodes don't lead one after the other. If the ending of episode 10 doesn't lead into the beginning of episode 11 because you're focusing on a different set of characters this week, you lose that forward momentum. But I would love to see some kind of storyline where they manage to do it, and I don't know if this would be possible, but where they manage to do for a half a season or a season where you have Rick and his group, Daryl and his group, Tyrese and his group, and just kind of all starting their own society separate from each other because they can't meet up or something. I think that would be interesting. I also don't think it would necessarily be feasible on television while maintaining forward momentum without being just, and now we're going to spend 5 minutes with this group, and then 5 minutes with that group, and then 5 minutes with this group, which just gets whiplashy.
Beth was with Daryl. That's right there.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes.
I think that's where we get to the difference between a 22 to 26 episode, regular network television series and a 8 and 8, 16 total cable series. I mean, because they kind of treat the first 8 and the second 8 almost as 2 different seasons. I mean, yes,
right.
Thematically it's one, but they kind of have to build things to where they get some closure and obviously leave some sort of cliffhanger to kind of keep you on the hook. But the flow is much different than even like a regular network television series. And I wonder if this was the typical 22 to 24 nowadays episode season, if we'd see more like single episode backstories, where we'd find out like what happened to Daryl.
Well, you have to, because you got to fill that time.
Yeah, you have to fill that time, and then you also start feeling like Lost if you want to go that far.
Or expand season 3.
But there's a lot of shows. Lost kind of paved the way for that. There's a lot of shows that do that. I mean, Revolution does it. Arrow does it. I think to pretty great effect. There's a lot of shows that have kind of built that trope. Even like The Following. The Fox show does that. So I think Lost kind of championed that and did it right. And there's been a lot of folks that have kind of copied that model.
I think in my perfect TV world, this season would have happened a season later, or the spinoff would happen a season sooner, and it would just be. And when we come back from the break, Saturdays it's Walking Dead Rick's group, and Sundays it's Walking Dead Daryl's group, or whatever. And they just went, hey, we're coming back and with 2 shows, and we're gonna, you can have your cake and eat it too, Jordan, where you get the forward momentum in both shows, but now you get to see how does Daryl lead a group for a sustained period of time, how does Tyrese do it, how does Rick do it, or whatever, Carol do it, or whatever. I would love to see that. I don't think it's going to work out that way. Even when we do get the spinoff, I don't get the impression that that's what it's going to be, but time will tell, of course.
It comes down to budgeting also. Like when you have like a prison, you have a central location where you can continue to film episodes at, and having multiple characters in different locations, it costs money to do that.
Right, exactly.
As much as you can use, the swamps and the woods of Georgia, like you can only go so far before you need to have a centralized location so you can base a lot of the structure of the show around. And that is where I assume the show's going to eventually lead up. We're going to have another central camp for all the characters to eventually regroup at or whatever. But so I mean, it's not necessarily telling, but because what do I know? Maybe they do have all the budget they need to have a show.
Well, from what I hear, the show's operating on a $55 million hole.
Yeah, so, but I mean, it never looks bad. So
Right. It's a very pretty hole.
yeah. There's a quote right there. Pathetic Jordan's picture.
It's going to be on the back of the box of the Blu-ray, isn't it? It's a very pretty hole.
If this was an episode of Jersey Shore, that would be the episode quote, but we don't do that for the show. So anyway, what else? I mean, we've talked about structure. We've talked about some of the characters that are going to be coming up. Are there any characters you want to see less from in the second half of the season, or more from?
He's a lot less Tara on the show. That's the sister, Lily's sister. Is going to be if Lily comes back. I wasn't not a big fan of that Tara person at all.
Let's limit it to more main characters.
That's fine. Yeah.
Is there anyone you want to see less from, or drastically more from, or a new pairing? Like, I mean, for me, that Daryl Beth pairing, that could be really interesting. We haven't seen a lot with those 2.
I agree, and that also comes from the fact that I don't think what's the actress name? Emily Kenny? Emily Kenny.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, Emily Kenny. I don't think she's really shown the best work in terms of being an actress on the show, and so I'd like to see if there was more material for her to step up. That'd be
That's the thing. She hasn't had much of an opportunity in many places too.
Yeah, but the places
walking around holding babies and singing.
Fair, but the places we have seen her have to kind of give certain monologues, I haven't found them very affecting. So I'd like to, if we're gonna get more of her, because by default we have her with Daryl, and that leads to more screen time in general. I'm hoping that is delivered upon.
Right.
This just comes more from the fact that I think a lot of the actors on the show are quite good, and so it's easier for me to kind of see where some of the shorter ends of the stick come up.
I can't think of anybody I'd really like to see less of, but I would like to see more of Glenn and Maggie together. Doing something other than wishing the other one off or one of them being sick. I think, if anything, with this first half season, I think Glenn kind of got short-shrifted, and I think there was a very important reason why that happened. I mean, he was a big part of the flu storyline, but I would almost love to see a Glenn and Maggie episode, like just the 2 of them, dealing with something, just to give them more screen time, because I like both those characters a lot.
That's kind of what I'm hoping to see more of in the next part of the season. Now that the group is broken up, is more character-centric. Like maybe we'll see, like you said, a Glenn and Maggie episode. I mean, obviously we'll see Rick and Carl episode, but it would be nice if they just would like focus on different parts of the group in different episodes, like you say, and kind of give us a little more time to breathe with these characters. The last season we had such a big ensemble, and it seemed like some of the episodes they were kind of fighting to make sure everybody had a little bit to do. You know what I mean, or a line of dialogue. It was we called it T-Dog syndrome. I think it just seemed like with the big ensemble, it's harder for the writers to juggle. Maybe this will give the characters a little more room to breathe, a little more depth if we give each characters like their own character-centric episodes since the group is broken up now. Like you're saying, it'd be kind of trying to go back and forth from one faction to another.
Tyrese would be another one I think we could probably all agree that could use more characterization on the show, just to bring him up as more than just like a guy that gets weirdly angry for reasons and then kind of boils down. Like there's just not a lot of. Like I think we've expressed kind of concerns about Tyrese's depiction on the show in general anyway, so it'd be nice to have just like kind of an episode to focus on, just more done with his character to kind of strengthen him as a presence on the show.
Well, yeah, and where we left him has a lot of potential with him and the group of kids, and this is just guessing, but possibly Judith, possibly meeting up with Carol. I think that the possibilities for where they left him are really cool, and it's probably one of the storylines I'm most interested to see where it goes from this first half of the season. Is what happens to him and the girls, and especially if they meet up with Carol, and probably that one and Rick and Carl. But I don't know that I need to see a lot of Rick and Carl one. I just need a little bit of resolution on it to see what happens with them.
I mean, Tyrese is such a more multi-dimensional character in the book. I think that's what's kind of lacking here. I mean, he's one of my favorite characters in the book, and it feels like he's kind of being given short shrift here in comparison. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just because I'm biased from having read the book or whatever, but it's kind of...
I think Brad obviously expressed the same opinions as you have, where he's been very disappointed with Tyrese's portrayal of this show. And I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but I certainly think that he hasn't been, compared to what you and me think of Tyrese, where we like his badassness, it just hasn't come out as often as it could. It'd be nice for the show to deliver more on not necessarily his badassness, but just at least make him a character, not just like guy that gets angry.
It's not even so much his badassness, it's just like, I don't know, he seemed like the second alpha male of the group. He just seemed like he gave Rick a sounding board when he needed one. It seemed like more of a useful and necessary component than he does here.
I guess I assume that we'll see more of Bob Suki and like what happens to him. I can't necessarily imagine him sticking around throughout the entire season, or at least through the end of the season. But if you're going to introduce a character like this who has a history with alcohol and has already made some bad blood based on choices in his first half of the season, I can imagine that not being wrapped up in some way in the next half of the season. So I'm curious about where that goes.
Well, especially since my money is still on him being the one who was feeding the walkers and dissecting rats and tacking them to boards. So I'd imagine we get more of him.
Plus, I like the actor. I mean, I like Lawrence Gillard. I mean, I think I would definitely like to see more of him.
Oh, and there's that whole phone or radio message thing that we heard on the radio.
Yeah.
Which I imagine will be tied into Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene.
I guess. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, and granted this is going back years, I think there was something similar involving them and a radio transmission of some type, not necessarily the same one, but just a radio transmission in the comics. So I really want to see how they play into that. I don't want to give Eugene and Rosita short shrift, but I really like Abraham, and I want to see him and them, but mostly him and mostly his mustache.
I keep forgetting about the radio thing just because it seems I forget about it just as quickly as the show did, since the show is just like, oh, here's the thing. By the way, zombies. Like,
well, by the way, 1,700 zombies. I mean, it's understandable. They had bigger issues going on. Anything else you want to see in the second half of the season before we wrap it up, gentlemen?
Nothing we haven't talked about, nothing that hasn't been kind of publicly disclosed. I'm looking forward to it, for sure.
More zombie destruction. I'm sure they'll deliver in some various clever ways, as they always do, on how zombies get eviscerated on the show.
More Greg Nicotero directed episodes, maybe?
Would be nice.
He has several coming, or he's starting the first one,
Yeah, I really just like his eye. I mean, some of my favorite episodes in this series have been ones that he's directed. So I think for a guy that's been on the special effects side, for him to be stepping up and taking more control. I think he's listed now as executive producer, or a producer on the show. and just contributing the way he has. I just like his eye. I mean, I could easily see him after the show is done and over, if he decides to move on and do something else, that's a path that he would probably go down. More on the directing side than the effects side. So,
well, if that's it for this episode, remember, until next time, and we'll probably have 1 or 2 episodes before this show comes back. We want to do a comic to TV show comparison for everything up to the end of the prison. But until then, you can leave us a voicemail at 972-798-3830. That's 972-798-3830. Or just send us an email, comments at walkingdeadtv.com. We'd love to get those, so that's comments at walkingdeadtv.com. But check out hhwlod.com for all of our great shows like Half Hour Wasted, The Long Box of Doom, Black Box, Out Now, Jersey Show, The Ichabod, Cranecast, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, and many, many more. And all those shows can be found on Facebook as well. We've got a brand new HHWLOD Podcast Network Facebook page, and there's all kinds of fun stuff on there. That's your one-stop shop for all the stuff you want to get from our network. And of course, there's always the Walking Dead TV Facebook group as well, which is hopping and bustling. You can follow us on Twitter at WDTV Podcast and at HHWLOD_network. And so until there's no more room left in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, Abraham has an awesome mustache. Have a good week, everybody.
so long.
Happy New Year's.
I'll sue ya! I'll take all your money! I'll sue ya! If you even look at me funny! I'll sue ya! I'll take all your money! I'll sue ya! If you even look at me funny! I'll sue ya! I'll sue ya! Put your finger back! I'll sue ya! Booyah! I'll sue ya!
Aaron, are you going to have to redo your Twitter name?
I already did.
You already did.
Yeah.
Oh, is it
I did
before
before
that?
it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
He
don't
just
want
wants
to
to
throw
date my friend.
Yeah. It was a bit of a thing because I had to create a second Aaron's PS3